Welcome back to the program. Karibu sana. It's now 9 minutes past 7 a.m. Good morning. Welcome to Good Morning Kenya. Today being the Wednesday, we want to take a look at the viewpoint, but with special focus on now that full endorsement to the AU position. Raila Odinga was officially unveiled yesterday by President William Ruto at State House in Nairobi. 8 regional heads of states and representatives attended, amongst other diplomats and even some dignitaries who were also at State House in Nairobi. So today, I really want us to get or go broad-based. Yes, so that's the word today. I want to have a kind of broad-based discussion on the importance of Raila Odinga's AU bid. I know it has been discussed, but then now it's now quite open that he is the candidate who is going to carry Kenya's flag to that position. Elections is slated for February next year, but now moving forward is going to be campaigns after campaigns after campaigns. But it is not yet over because we still have other candidates who are also angling for the same position. Let me do this. Let me introduce my guest. I have got Dr. Joseph Rotich. He's not new to Jerusalem here on set. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lord.
And even engineer, I said almost engineer Rotich. Yeah. Engineer Crispus Wathemba.
Thank you so much.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
You are all not new to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And gentlemen, we've discussed this before. So it is, the green light is on. So it's all of us now to go. Let me start with you, Crispus. First again, once again, welcome. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Whatever happened at State House Nairobi, perhaps people did not see it come the way it was, but it happened.
For me, I'm looking at it as a very important milestone in terms of the diplomatic influence that William Ruto administration has demonstrated it has over the region. For quite some time, people thought Kenya had lost it in terms of the kind of influence it has over the other regional states.
Yes.
But clearly, by William Ruto being able to marshal the leadership of Uganda and Tanzania to come and in a solidarity manner support the candidature of Raila Amolo Odinga is a clear demonstration that Kenya still has an important position in the region. And therefore, we need to stop viewing this as a Raila's bid, as a Kenyan bid, but as a regional bid where the East African region has an opportunity to demonstrate its leadership over the rest of Africa.
Yeah.
And for a long time, East Africa has remained very peaceful. Despite the various challenges we've seen in Somalia, in Ethiopia, now in DRC, we have still remained a very peaceful and resolveful region. And therefore, we need to take this opportunity now that we have one of us who is pushing to be the leader of the EAU, the African Union, to demonstrate our ability to marshal Africa towards the Agenda 63. And the Agenda 63 is an agenda that we all want to identify with. We had our own Vision 2030, which is 5 or 6 years away. Now, Agenda 63 is about 32 years away, 31 years away. How can we take advantage of it? How can we make sure that as East Africa, we are able to set the foundation that will make sure that by the time 2063 arrives, Africa is in a better position than it is today.
Yes.
One of the areas we need to address, the issue of trade within Africa. We are told that we trade around 18% compared to how much we trade with other parts of the world. How can we increase that from 18 to 50% to 70%? The other issue is the closed borders. You find today, for example, if I want to go to Mauritania, I must fly to Istanbul, then come back to Africa. How can we open our skies? How can we make sure that we are able to have borderless, the borders are clear within the region? How can we be able to manage the issues of disease? For example, we have mpox right now. We have challenges of hunger in the southern part of Africa. We have had our own challenges with the floods recently and climate change. How do we come together and be able to work together as a continent without depending on the support of the West and the East?
Dr. From what we saw yesterday, it is now time for East Africa Bloc to lose this, because history has that we've never had a representative at the AUC as East Africa. So it is now the bloc to lose this.
I think, as I listen to the dignitaries, I mean the presidents, President of Tanzania, Salva Kiir of Sudan, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, and His Excellency the President William Ruto. The way they loaded Raila on his achievement and as an African statesman, and the kind of experience that is bringing to the AU chairmanship is something that we must be proud of, Olo. Because when you look at Raila's candidature, you see a beacon of hope to African countries, and more so the East African countries. Because when I looked at them, it is like it is a God-given opportunity. When they talked, you saw Suluhu actually expressing the hope that the East African countries will benefit a lot from the AU position through the experience a man in the person of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And to me, I can see Raila as somebody who is capable with the kind of experience that he has. And as an African statesman, Raila goes beyond Kenya. And that experience alone, that know-how beyond the borders of East Africa is an advantage to his candidature, even in the coming election. So I have a lot of hope that as Raila actually spoke, as Raila expressed his hope to enhance the economy of Africa, that we have abundance of resources in Africa that if harnessed well will benefit the African countries who are actually languishing in poverty. And I'm looking forward to Raila's exploiting his real potential as a leader, as a potential... I looked at him as an economist because when he was expressing about the potential that is in Africa, the potential that is in our economies, I could see that there is some hope at the light of the tunnel. Otherwise, we hope the best and we wish him the best, even in this endeavor for the African scene.
My question still stands. It is now time for East Africa to lose this one because we've never had any candidate there. What does it really mean generally for the East Africa? Because when you saw these leaders come, and Museveni made a light joke that you're the people who invited me here. So it's a show of unity amongst the East Africa bloc and members, the representatives who showed us.
I think going by that
this time around it is ours to take home.
Going by that law, I saw the heart beats of the three leaders of the East African countries. Actually, they saw Raila as one of their own. It is now our time, it is now our opportunity to lead the very important docket in Africa as the chairman. And when I saw that, Olo, I looked at myself beyond Kenya. I saw myself as an African and the East African who will stand to benefit even from the leadership of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And this in itself is an opportunity for Africa, Olo, because when you have your man at the top, and even as the world is talking, we have over 50 African countries who will be looking at Kenya to produce a leader of that stature of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. I feel this is something we should be proud of as Kenyans. This is something we should be proud of as East African people. And of course, it was said also it was an opportunity for the East Africa. We have never had it before. So, if you overheard what Museveni said, that somebody came who was also eyeing for the same position, and he did welcome him in his country, but he never assured him that he was going to support him. And in his mind, he said he had his own, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and he loaded him with a lot of praises. And so, although what we can say, this is a great opportunity for the East African countries to have a leader who is coming from within them to lead the African nation.
But even when that was happening, Engineer, you listened to that statement, and Raila said it is not a one man's journey, but a collective ambition, or one man's ambition to get a job or something of that sort. But it's a collective journey to serve the motherland. That is Africa. When you listen to such kind of a statement, and even from most of the dignitaries who spoke there, they call him Raila Odinga is a reformist, a Pan-Africanist. He's a visionary leader, an astute leader. He's not the same Raila that we know here, but outside Kenya, he's being held in high esteem.
Well, you see, there are a lot of voices that are coming out of Africa that we need to change the way the global politics is conducted.
Yes.
We've had William Ruto pushing for the change of the financial infrastructure as it is today. We had Yoweri Museveni call for change at the AU. We don't want to be called for meetings just to sign papers and make speeches and take photographs. We want to see real things happening. We want to, he calls himself a wealth creator. We also want to see as many African leaders being able to create wealth in their region. We also had Raila calling of Africa being a country with a lot of potential, and saying the minerals we have, what can we do with them? And therefore, we are looking for a leader from Raila Amolo Odinga who will bring changes within the AU that will make sure that this bloc can work together. If we come together as a continent and we harness the wealth that we have, which is underground, a lot of our wealth is underground. If we can be able to harness it together as a bloc, we'll be able to negotiate for a better deal. We'll be able to use that deal to bring development that is still lacking in many parts of Africa. And if we do that as a continent, united, we'll be able. Remember, the Western world and the Eastern world has been able to take advantage of us because we are divided. When China comes with its economic charms, we go to China. When the French come with their colonial ties, we go to the French. When the British come with their historical ties to us, we go to the British. We are never a united front. But if you look at the wealth we have as a continent, compared to that is found in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, is more than what is in the Middle East. But how much have we been able to take advantage of it? The Middle East has been able to do marvelous things.
Yeah.
Qatar was able to host a World Cup in the middle of the desert at the tune of $250 billion. Can we be able to do such an event even in Africa as a continent together by using the resources we have? No. If we want to do a railway, we must borrow. If we want to do a dam, we must borrow. If we want to do power, we must borrow. If we want to fight disease, we must get vaccine from the West. We must
Are we self-sufficient?
We have not been able to take full advantage of what we have.
You're saying we are not self-sufficient? As Africa, I think
we can be self-sufficient, but we haven't.
Potentially, we can be self-sufficient. But as at now, we are not.
For example, when Ukraine was attacked by Russia, why did we feel our stomachs feel pain? Yet we have enough land to cultivate enough food from Africa. Why do we have to import cereals from Ukraine? Why do we have to import edible oil from Malaysia? Yet we have enough land, we have the weather, we have the human capital, we have the resources to be able to cultivate and produce enough to meet our own needs. But because we are still trapped in this perception that the West and East is able to provide with us, that we must import. We import 95% of what we consume. We export less than 5%. Yet the world is expecting us to realize our full potential. Yet we haven't. In the very soon, by 2063, we will be probably 50% of the population of the world.
That is, whatever we're talking about actually is on the front page of all the three papers I have here. Raila's show of power, that is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Raila's show of power, when you have got 8 regional leaders at the footsteps of State House, red carpet there, led by President William Ruto. It was a very big moment yesterday at State House, a very busy one for that matter. And now, one gentleman who is going to be very busy is Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi. He's been charged with this mandate, clearly, for shuttle diplomacy. Doctor, look at the position of Musalia. And, you know, it was more unlikely when President William Ruto tapped him into his cabinet. And even by the time the cabinet was going through some sort of changes and all that, he was retained. But perhaps people did not see the reason why he was retained. Maybe, according to me, one of them is because of this reason. The process had already been started, and he was doing shuttle diplomacy across African continents, and the conversation was going. You'd imagine if Musalia Mudavadi was also shown the door. Dr.
I think going by experience and the person of Mudavadi, Olo, you find that Mudavadi is one of the most experienced politicians in this country. And this is also somebody who had worked very closely with Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And he's better placed is better placed to assist even in the campaign or coordinating the Raila's campaign across the continent. So the person of Mudavadi, according to me, has been reserved. Not necessarily for this position of AU campaign or coordinating person.
But because of the experience.
But because of the experience that he had.
Yeah.
In fact, this is a gentleman who assisted Ruto when he was passing through the very kind of campaign that we have had, the chances and the likes. And even when he actually broke up the issues, the cabinets, the gentleman remained. Not because of anything else, but because, and of course, regarding that position of Mudavadi, it is an unconstitutional position. It is not a position that is contained in our constitution. But this one is being reserved for a particular purpose, which one of the purposes could be this one, but another purpose is actually maybe being the chief advisor of His Excellency the President. Because I believe Mudavadi is more experienced and more experienced than His Excellency the President himself. He's older than him. And in this case, also having Mudavadi as somebody who cuts across. Mudavadi is not so much inclined to a tribal cocoon. Mudavadi cuts across. If he goes everywhere, Mudavadi is just is more exposed to all of them.
You say Mudavadi is more exposed to the president.
In fact, when Ruto was a member of parliament, Mudavadi during Moi's regime, Mudavadi was the vice president.
I think he just brings some sense of,
he's an elder. And you cannot get away with it. And then again, I have also told you that historically, Mudavadi has been with Raila more than even the time he has been with Ruto.
Yeah.
And the man is better placed to mediate, or rather be in between. Because this also is somebody whom Raila can trust to transact this business.
Very good.
So in this case, I think also Mudavadi is being prepared for the future undertakings. I don't know which undertaking is that.
We'll be here to tell. What do you make of this headline, engineer?
Well, it clearly demonstrates that as much as Raila has never been elected president in this country, he still has a lot of influence in the region. He has a lot of respect. You heard what Obasanjo said, that when they came here in 1995 and he went back to Nigeria, he was arrested, and later he had the opportunity to be elected as president. So they both here in the east and in the west, it appears that Raila Amolo is a very big man. And therefore, as a country, we must also give him the kind of respect and support he deserves. As a man who has clearly demonstrated that as a single person, he's able to put Kenya at the right position in Africa. And therefore, that power that he holds right now, we have a responsibility to make sure as a country, we also conduct ourselves in the most responsible way as possible, so that he is not at the AU dealing with African issues, and we are back home, we have problems.
Yes.
So we as a country have a responsibility to be able to come together and be able to handle our issues in a better way than we have handled before, so that we demonstrate that the people we produce here to be able to handle African issues are people that we have cultured, people we have prepared very well because we are also a well-mannered country. So we as a Kenyan country, we have a responsibility to make sure that Raila Amolo Odinga, the power he exudes is the same power we as a country exudes.
Exactly.
I think there's something that I want to mention there, Olo. What I also witnessed yesterday, the talk that His Excellency the President actually alluded to, Right Honorable Raila Odinga. It is one of the kind of talks that I admired, and I realized that Kenya has come of age. Kenya, we have matured politically. Because if you compare the time, it is now 2 years since we ended up our last competition, politics. And the talk as it is now, although you cannot tell the same Ruto today and the Ruto who was campaigning against Raila, and the talk that was there by then. Now, the talk yesterday was Raila as an international man, as a statesman who actually befits to be the African chairman, and this one is coming from not other person, but His Excellency the President William Samoei Ruto, and that shows that we have matured as a country, and our democracy has also matured. Because we can differ today in principle, but tomorrow we are eating together. And this is the kind of democracy that we need in this nation. Raila and His Excellency President Ruto, you cannot tell what they were 2 years back. Even not even 2 years, 1.5 years ago, you cannot tell how they were, the hostility that was there. But as they are now, they are working as leaders of this great nation and also beyond. Now we are talking about an African leader. So in this case, I want to laud this nation that the extent and the growth of our democracy is something we must respect as a nation. And I should also tell Kenyans that the difference that we normally see in our politicians is not an enmity in any case. Because look at what the kind of relationship that His Excellency the President has with his Right Honorable Raila Odinga.
Yes.
You would not have imagined. And those of us who fought some time back because of the difference between the two gentlemen,
yes,
I think we have been pronounced wrong.
We are known to be one of the best producers of tea and coffee in Kenya,
Yes.
in Africa basically, and we export a lot of it. But before Raila takes that position to export more coffee and tea, why don't we consume our own tea here on GMK?
I think you have spoken rightly.
Let's take a tea break. We'll bring back with more.
Thank God for that remembrance and mindings.
Mtazamaji, tumekuandalia taarifa zinazogonga vichwa vya vyombo vya habari kutoka hapa jijini Nairobi na pia mashinani.
Wanahabari zaidi ya ubora wao wako ange kukuletea habari pindi zinapochipuka kutoka pembe zote za Kenya.
Kwenye kipindi cha Tamrini tunakuletea mazungumzo ya moja kwa moja kufafanua na kuangazia masuala yanayokuhusu wewe mtazamaji.
Kumbuka, taarifa yenye thamani daima hupokewa kwa amani.
Hivyo basi usikose kuungana nasi kila siku ya wiki.
Tukupakulie na tukutaarifu taarifa yenye mnato kwenye runinga unayoienzi. Kwenye kurunzi mashinani,
sisi DC.
The young generation awakens on Y254, the leading youth TV station in Kenya. We treat you to current affairs, entrepreneurship, health, and human interest conversations.
It's art, it's culture.
Movies, gossip and trends, sports,
Drama!
We bring you a vibe like no other, straight to your living room.
To keep you informed, inspired, entertained,
and most of all, refreshed.
we are such a vibe!
Y254. Imagine.
Do not lean on your own understanding.
Singing is really good and I really love it and I enjoy it. I would like to collaborate with an artist called Size 8 because she's really a good singer and I would like her to help me in nurturing and growing my talent.
I love today's book. And you know why? Because it has some of my favorite characters' names.
Today I'm going to show you guys how to make the yummiest chicken fried rice at the comfort of your home.
Okay. So we are good to go. I said before we import more tea and coffee, we consume it here, right, Dr. and Engineer?
Yes, we shall consume as we.
Very good. All right. So here we are. The discussion we're having today, just wanted to take a look at what really happened yesterday. It's not something new, but yesterday was part of the climax of what we should be expecting moving forward. On the front page of the Star newspaper, it's more or less the same. Is Ruto game plan to propel Raila's AUC chair campaigns, that is. Ruto game plan to propel Raila's AUC campaigns. That is on the front page of the Star newspaper. Let me get to the Standard. Raila unleashed. Yes, Raila unleashed. That happened yesterday. So, gentlemen, well, the Standard newspaper, the Star, and the Daily Nation have their own rate. But let me come back to you. So, I really understand what you've said. There is one person who is supposed to do a very important job here, Kenyan, the Wanjiku. How is he supposed to behave? I am really not so sure how we should behave at this particular point. It's akin to mgeni akikuja nyumbani, you must be in your best behavior. You don't shout, relax. Otherwise, they'll take this message home that kwa Dr. Rotich, kids are so rowdy. How are we supposed to handle ourselves as Kenyans or as East Africa? Because election is sometimes next year in February. So moving forward, how are we supposed to handle this? We have other competitors. We have other blocks who are also competing for the same position. It must be a very delicate position for us as East Africa and as Kenya. Let me start with you, Engineer.
Well, Raila has requires 38 votes or 34 heads of state to vote for him to win this election on the first round. Already East Africa has committed around 8 votes. We understand that he already has support from an additional 11 other countries, which we are not able to name. So if he confidently knows he has 19 votes in his basket, he's now looking for an additional 15 votes to be able to win this seat. Now, the most important thing he needs to deliver for him to deliver this win is to be able to convince not just the additional 15, but more than 15 countries, so that by the time he reaches that voting day, he wins it at 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, the challenge we have with this kind of campaigns is not the roadside campaigns we are used to. It means you have to meet heads of state, foreign affairs ministers, prime ministers in areas where there is a head of state and head of government, and engage them in areas of convergence, in areas where you as a candidate, you must demonstrate what you're going to deliver for them, and also be able to be challenged. For example, Raila is known as a reformist. There are heads of state who are not don't share the same ideals. They have been in power for more than 40 years. How will you explain to them your ideals about democracy? There are issues you're discussing about minerals being harnessed and maximized in terms of wealth. Yet there are foreign countries that have a stronger influence in that country. For example, in the Francophone countries, they have to speak to Paris before they make any decision. How do you convince them to make an independent decision? We have areas like the Sahel region where already 3 countries have moved away from the Francophone. The Russians have taken over. The ECOWAS has banned them. So there are certain regional dynamics that he has to navigate to be able to win that region as a bloc. So we as a country, and even the people who are going to spearhead these campaigns, they have a lot of work to do in terms of convincing these people. And at a regional platform, Kenya has not been able to play this kind of game before. We've never had any of us holding an African position. The best maybe we have had is maybe in the East African region, where maybe you have somebody at the EAC, the Secretariat, at the UN, maybe a few. So this is an African continent where you are dealing with various countries, regions. The North Africa, these are Arabs. We have the West Africa. These are Francophone countries, predominantly Francophone. We have the Central Africa, where there's a lot of challenges, disease, civil strife. We have the East Africa, which is okay for you. We have South Africa, the SADC region, which must speak as one, as a bloc. They have maybe South Africa they listen to. You need to go and talk to them and understand what they want. And all these regions have an interest that you must be able to demonstrate to deliver. Yeah. And if you are not able to demonstrate that, you will have a very serious challenge in terms of convincing them that you are able to deliver. Already we have a candidate for Mauritius who can convince the South Africans. We have a candidate from Djibouti who can convince the North Africans. So we are left with only maybe the East Africa and the West Africa where there is no much of an issue. But those other regions, you must be able to demonstrate that you are able to bring their interests at the fore as compared to the candidates they have from that region. Yes.
Doctor, when you listen to Crispus, it means it's not an easy walk in the park for Raila Odinga or even for the Secretariat who is going to steer the campaigns.
In fact, what I'm only relying on Secretariat Olo to spearhead the proper coordination of Raila's campaign. But personally, I'm relying on His Excellency the President, Ruto, to be the one championing, because he had always had a head start in most of the things that he has done in this country, I mean, in Africa and in Kenya as a whole. And if we look at the presidency and the president himself, His Excellency the President Ruto, he has a lot of respect in Africa. And he's transgressed all these areas, knowing almost at the personal level of most of the presidents of Africa. And I don't think the whole idea will be left to Mudavadi and the secretariats who have actually formed. I think His Excellency the President must spare his very vital time to go to these countries to campaign for Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And going also by what my brother said about the French-speaking countries, we have also those who are different or Islamic nations who may not be buying our idea. You may talk about our political difference as far as the level of our reforms. Yeah. You know, Kenya is being rated as one of the advanced democracy in Africa. And that also may bring some challenge to some countries which, of course, they are still lagging behind and they don't want anything. They don't want to emulate what's actually happening in Kenya. And more so, as my brother said, that Right Honorable Raila Odinga has been a reformist. And they are always equating the changes that we have witnessed in this country as the changes that Raila contributed a lot in making this nation the way it is now, as far as the reforms are concerned. So if there are those who may not be interested with the reforms, I think those are some of the few roadblocks. But in my own prediction, Olo, I'm foreseeing a situation whereby Right Honorable Raila Odinga has an upper hand because of his very close relationship with His Excellency the President. And if the president will offer that valuable time to go personally and campaign for him, I'm very sure we shall come more than 34 countries. Yeah.
Gentlemen, having this discussion, that this reminds you of the late Muammar Gaddafi, what he was pushing for before he exited the stage. He was pushing
for a united Africa. Yes. And he also foresaw an Africa that was, Mudavadi, not Mudavadi, but Gaddafi had identified how resourceful Africa is. Yes. And he was actually informed that we are only related to the West because they want our minerals. Because if you look at the European countries, be it from whichever area that they have been, they have always been interested in causing conflicts in those countries which are endowed with minerals. And then Gaddafi is one of those people who actually saw the potential of Africa, that if Africa will unite and harness their own resources, they will bring up an Africa that is self-reliant, independent of, economically.
Yeah, Crispus, again, when you had the leaders speak yesterday, it's about coffee, it's about trade, it's about non-tariff barriers, and et cetera, then they're still echoing what the late Gaddafi was rooting for at the same time.
You know, even as early as early this year, we had the International Assistance Development Conference here, and Museveni was alluded to the fact that whenever we are being called by these development agencies, it's not about borrowing money for me to be able to produce within my country. They make me borrow money to buy things from their country, to be reliant in their imports, not reliant in my own export. So Raila, Gaddafi, Museveni, and even William Ruto are people who are now saying Africa is rising. We need to change the way things are organized in terms of our economy, in terms of our social fabric, also in terms of our politics. For example, here, our political fabric has been challenged by the young people. They have said the order that has been there is not good for us. The kind of governance we have seen is not good for us. So therefore, even William Ruto must also demonstrate and be able to help in terms of making Raila's candidate either attractive to areas where the young people have strong influence. For example, in Senegal, where we had an AU commissioner chair was from Senegal, and the president there was refusing to let go power. And the young people demonstrated there and demanded for an election. And they ended up electing a very young man. So therefore, William Ruto must be able to show that in his own backyard, he has listened to the young people. He wants to do what they want. In the same way in Senegal, where they had an AU chair and they had challenges of their own. And we have many parts of Africa where young people are rising up. Even here in Uganda, in Tanzania, in many other parts of Africa, we have a bulge in young people. What these young people want is good governance. Can many of our leaders be able to deliver that? And therefore, if we can be able to demonstrate from within our own Africa, within Kenya, that we are able to take stock of the population we have, the constituency we have, and be able to deliver what they want, and use that to leverage in terms of convincing the other African state that what we are doing in Kenya is good for the rest of Africa. So don't bulge of young threaten your power. See that as an opportunity. The other opportunity we have is that this population, if we make the most out of it, not just in terms of taking advantage of our resources, by using the human capital to leapfrog our economies in a way that we are able to stop being reliant on the Western world, on the Eastern world, we will be a great continent. China is able to support its economy by its own population of 1.5 billion. How can then we use our own 1.5 billion as an African continent to be driving our own economy, increase the trade we have between us, fight disease, fight hunger, bring development, use low-cost technology to deliver development where it's not there. Let us not rely on expensive technology from the West. Let us look for ways we can come up with appropriate technology made locally to deliver development in areas where we don't have, especially in issues, for example, health, in education. Right now, as a country, we are struggling with teacher salaries, but we have more problems than the salaries. The infrastructure in our schools is very bad. What can we use to make sure that beyond the problem of teachers, we're able to deliver decent classrooms for students to be able to learn? There are areas in this country where people still learn under a tree 60 years after independence. How can we now use our resources and our technology, our young people, to deliver those classrooms? And those are the kind of conversations we expect Raila Amolo Odinga to have with these leaders, to show them that I am not coming here to challenge your authority because of my reformist agenda. I am coming to say, can we work with what you have and make your country better without being influenced by the West?
That reminds me of when Moses was just by the Red Sea. Alifika hapo akasema, hey, mzee nimefika hapa, so how do I cross this, you know? Then God asked him, what do you have in your hand? You know,
use that one.
Use that one, whatever you have. That reminds me of exactly that what you say. But then, Daktari, moving forward, you can imagine the kind of work that is now left for the Secretariat. The shuttle diplomacy, whatever is working behind the scenes that we are not aware of. until yesterday, we did not expect, nobody saw what was happening behind the scenes until we saw what we saw in State House yesterday. Almost better part of the day was all focused in State House. Perhaps, maybe not in details, but if you can, what do you think is going to be happening behind the scenes? State House, the Raila Odinga campaign secretariat, the shuttle diplomacy, phone calls here and there, doing follow-ups here and there. What do you think is now happening moving forward as we head towards 2025?
You see, Olo, as a country, we are now taking Raila as a project. And being a project, it's a Kenyan project. Because as much as we are relying on our East African countries to support us, the initiative is Kenya. And mobilizing both the manpower and the resources in the sense that maybe the financial resources, to enable Right Honorable Raila to move freely across the African countries, it is an enormous task, which of course it is not cheap.
Yeah.
And I expect the state to undertake that as a project. And also, place before Raila the real manpower who can deliver. You see, if it is our project, it means that we must plan well, we must execute well, and we must be seen as people who are serious. And in this case, Olo, and that is why I'm telling you that His Excellency the President, Samoei Ruto, must focus. And I believe much of the programs that he should be having, because the election is scheduled for February.
Yes.
So before February, maybe December, January, I think His Excellency the President should have sleepless nights or planning overnight holds to make sure that he plans well, he executes well, and he goes personally to transgressing these African countries by visits. Because this thing, what I realized the other day, Olo, is that there is this gentleman from where who went to Museveni. He went personally and requested Museveni for his support. So Museveni declined because he had already had a meeting with His Excellency the President Ruto in support of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. I expect so many of such visits by His Excellency the President. If we have to realize this thing, he should not leave the whole thing to the Secretariat and the likes, because we are talking about the presidents of of our countries. So the equal partner could be our own president, who would actually be, it will be easy, it will be easily hard. And in any case, I'm seeing this this campaign having a breakthrough in the end. Because when I look at Africa and the way Africa respects Kenya, you oversaw, Olo, when Ruto was visiting America, when Ruto was visiting France, when Ruto was visiting, he was talking not only as the President of the Republic of Kenya, he was talking as an African president. Yeah. And he was talking as representing Africa. So in this case, I'm seeing ourselves having an upper advantage because we have a person at the helm who has a respect across African countries. And I'm foreseeing Raila sailing through. And come February, it's not even prediction, it is beyond prediction. This is a sure bet, Olo.
You're a fortune teller. Sure bet. Crispus, the Secretariat, the kind of work that is now going to be happening, the proposals, the phone calls, you have to do a lot of follow-ups here and there and all that. What do you think is now happening in those corners, in those houses, in those rooms?
If I was probably the head of the Secretariat, the first thing I would probably do is gather intelligence as much as possible on the countries where I can easily convince and win my vote.
Yes.
You may not win all the votes from the African
and it is 34 plus 1 to win the first round.
You must be able to identify where are the low-hanging fruits. For example, yesterday he had the audience of 8 heads of state and government representatives. From those 8, even if they were to get you 3 candidates of their own, you're already at 24. Then if you say, as a country, can I look for 10? You're already at that. So there must be some mathematics you need to do and say, you look to take Africa as a region and say, North Africa, who do I have an ally there? In West Africa, who do I have as an ally? In East Africa, I'm covered. In Southern Africa, Who do I have an ally? Then you look at the intelligence. What are the things that I need to address in these countries? Even us, when we are doing campaigns in Kenya, when you go to, if you are running for a county, if you go to this sub-county, the other sub-county, you change the agenda you address, because every area has its own interest. So he must be able to understand what does each and every region looking for within the AU, and be able to use the Secretariat to capture the attention of the head of state in that area, so that by the time you get your 15 minutes or 30 minutes with that person, you are able to convince him that you are the right candidate for that region. Because you must demonstrate you're not just a candidate for Kenya or East Africa, you must be the candidate for Africa. Because once you get into that seat, you will not be speaking for Kenya or East Africa, you'll be speaking for the whole of Africa. There are conversations where you'll be required as the AU Commission Chair to say, as an African continent, this is our position, and that position must be backed by the support you have from the people. So the better in terms of the votes or the support he gets in the first round is a demonstration that he has the overwhelming support of the head of state. And the only way he can do that is be able to fully understand what these leaders are. And that's the headache the secretary has in terms of understanding all these regions. What do they require? What do they want to hear from a candidate? What are the expectations of the candidate? What have the other candidates failed to do that have made these people be disappointed? What are the things that made people vote for a certain candidate and not the other one? Those are the things that they need to understand. So in terms of understanding or getting the intelligence of every country is very important. Then using that to actually capture the attention, the interest of those leaders is another headache for those people. Then also coming up with a narrative or the language on how to address some of these people. Remember, some of these people are coming from countries where they speak Portuguese, French. We are coming from an English-speaking region. You must also be having a team that is able to use this kind of language to market you in those areas. You must also be able to convince these people using your Kenyan culture, why you should be able to work together with those countries or wherever you are seeking votes. So there are a lot of things that we're able to bring together in terms of capturing the attention of that one vote that you're looking for from every leader.
Let me ask you, how different is this campaign? Does it require propaganda?
You know, this is not tialala. This is not tialala. This is not tumesema. This is different.
This is different. Does it require propaganda machine well-oiled?
I think the driving force, although is about the perception. How are we perceived as Kenyans from African perspective? And that is actually very key in this campaign, because the African countries look at Kenya as on a head start in most of the things, be it on democratic advancement or maturity, be it on development, adventures. And I saw one of the talks that Kamal, the vice president of the America, he said that Kenya is a country that can catch up with this is a fast developing world, which they can come up with new and discoveries, I mean, very fast. And this is a country that can be depended on to deliver in most of the things that are actually, coming up. And in this case, if African countries are perceiving us the way the Americans are perceiving us, I think we have what it takes to get this position. In fact, according to me, although I look at it that Right Honorable Raila will have a head start of 35 votes. 35, minimum 35. And anything beyond 35, he may not can 40, but he'll get between 35 and 40. And what I'm seeing, he may actually end up with 36 votes in Africa, and he will win.
But this requires, it will only depend on how he will present his case to all those other blocks, the Francophone, the Anglophone, and all that, so that he will sell his agenda as the AUC chair. But then, look at it, Crispus, I asked, does it require propaganda? I mean, all these countries have different problems, you know, civil unrest in some countries in the West, mostly. Other countries also incline to the West, mostly again. Kenya, we also have our own inclination, certain, you know. But bringing these heads together, and to speak in one voice is now the biggest problem that the secretary is going to face.
You know, you're not going to campaign on the roadside or in the media. The person you are seeking to convince is one person.
One person.
The head of state.
Yes.
Who, even getting the audience, is not a walk in the park. You must plan, get an appointment, prepare an agenda, and use the few minutes he gives you or she gives you to really sell yourself, sell the country, sell the candidacy, sell the whole aspiration that you are bringing on the table.
And the aspiration of that particular country.
And, the aspiration of, and then also you must demonstrate that you understand that country. That's why I say the intelligence of that country or understanding that country you're selling your candidacy to is very important. And that's why the Secretariat will have its biggest challenge. Because as a country, I don't see how we've been able to demonstrate that we have able to understand our peers. If you go to, for example, West Africa, how much do we know about Liberia? How much do we know about Senegal? How much do we know about Gambia? How much do we know about Mauritania? Where there are serious challenges, where we have heard of modern slavery happening. We have challenges in North Africa, where Tunisia, there are also issues of immigrants. We have Cairo, Egypt, where the military is still very influential. Come to Sudan, where there is no government in place. Go to Central Africa. Go to Niger.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. So when you say you want 34 votes, you already have 15. You already have 15 votes, which you don't know where you will get.
Okay.
So this is a very difficult task that they have decided to take on, and it will require every effort. And that's why I'm saying there is a possibility you people like the Uhuru Kenyatta will have to come and assist Baba climb this mountain. They failed Mount Kenya, but they have to climb Kilimanjaro.
Our tea is getting cold. Our tea is getting cold.
Thank you.
Let's take a break.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back with more. When we come back, I want us to ask this question. Why is it that AUC is not so keen on former presidents? That's another thing. Coming back shortly with that. Stay with us. And welcome back. So let's take, let's continue with the program. All right. So let me ask you, gentlemen, when you see a couple of candidates who are also angling for the same position of the AUC chair, this question goes to all of you. Why do you think AUC is not so keen on having former heads of states, former government dignitaries, also people who held some high positions in different jurisdictions, to take up that role as the AUC chair? Let me start with you, Dr.
I think, although going by that again, I think it is an African mentality because most African heads of state, the current one, the sitting presidents, would not wish to have their opponents, those who drawn them during the last campaign, to be in any position. I think we are lucky as a nation, Kenya, where the president, the sitting president, embraces the colleague who actually vote with him politically. But in African countries, you find that we are not like European countries. We are not even like Americans. You have seen what has been happening in America. Most of the former head of states, they are part and parcel of advisory teams who are advising the government. But how many in African countries are actually, how many can accommodate them? I think it is an African mentality, which of course we must remove that kind of thing. Because the former head of state, I believe, has a wealth of information, wealth of experience that can really help the sitting president to really propel and manage the country well. And I can say this is an African weakness. It is not something that is, it is not a strength, but it is weakness. Because like in this country, we have had former heads of state. The living former head of state is this the president, Uhuru Kenyatta. And Uhuru Kenyatta was at the helm of Kenyan politics for 2 terms. And he wields a lot of information about the solutions or most of the problems that we have. There are those things that he failed to do. And he has the answers already for all those problems. And I longed for a time when the sitting presidents should be able to come up and then embrace those formers, those who will be able to advise them on the way forward. Because that is the only way to go. Old is wealth and old is gold. When you have a lot of experience, you help the community to propel or to go ahead. Look at the Obasanjo. Obasanjo is not a young man. He has lived as a president, he has lived as an ordinary man, he has lived as a spokesman, and up to today, he still determines the politics of Africa. So in this case, if we embrace such kind of people, I think they have all the wealth of information. And going forward, I'm longing to see Kenya emulating the same, where we have our past presidents seated with the current presidents, actually talking on the same understanding, advising on the way forward of the country, but not necessarily to cause the antagonism as to how the country should be led.
Yeah. Crispus.
Well, going by what I've observed, not just in Africa, I think even if you look at the UN, the EU, all these leaders who take over these organizations are either former prime minister, former foreign affairs ministers, or ministers from their country. I think it's probably international relations experts maybe need to advise us whether it's a tradition that was developed where a former head of state should not be able to lead this organization, probably because of the advantage they might have had when they were in power in terms of knowing certain issues about the countries where they are seeking support for, if they were to be elected the head of UN or head of AU or head of EU. Because if you look at, for example, the head of state of Kenya right now, the former head of state, Uhuru Kenyatta, the highest position he has been nominated for is in terms of bringing the peace process together for the DRC. Even Moi, when he was had left power, he was still given the opportunity to spearhead the peace process in South Sudan, but nothing continental as is the case of the AU or any other office. So probably the advantage they have is the intelligence they have about other countries, certain decisions they might have made when they were in power. Maybe they might have brushed areas where with other leaders. So therefore, it puts them in a very uncomfortable position to go back to these people and seek for vote. For example, William Ruto has had his own challenges with Uganda recently with the issue of the oil. We had our own challenges with Magufuli, the late Magufuli, with Uhuru Kenyatta. We had our own challenges with Nyerere and Kenyatta those days. So we have had areas where when you are head of state, you have a bit of conflict with your neighbors, which is because of it's a hazard of the work. I mean, the work is not easy. For example, right now, Rwanda is not in very good relations with both Uganda, Burundi, and Congo. Now imagine Kagame has left power and is looking for the AU seat, and we as East Africa are supposed to vote for him. Yet there are historical issues that will come out where you, when you are head of state, you did not treat me with respect and decorum as an equal leader. So it is important that you avoid...
You have somebody who is neutral.
Exactly. So it's important you avoid putting yourself in a position where the other leader may start bringing issues that may put you in a very uncomfortable position.
Very well put, Engineer. But then now, when you had Honorable Raila Odinga speak yesterday, two things stood out. One, he was going to push for the scrapping of the visa, that if I want to come from here going to another northern country or southern country in the south, it's visa free. And number two is the non-tariff barriers. These two things have been in the discussion anytime the former heads of state meet, either here at KICC. We've heard that a lot. But why is it becoming a hard nut to crack for Africans? Engineer, you said that for you to go to a particular country, you have to go to another country's sky and go back to another country's sky, then land to... It's almost 48 hours of flight. Instead, just take like straight flight, land, do your business, come back home.
You know, the challenge we have as a continent, before the scramble for Africa, at the beginning of the 20th century, we were one block. I would move from Congo to the east part of Africa, which is Kenya. I would move from Sahel region to Cairo, selling my salt. I would move from the West Africa to Northern Africa without any challenges. We were borderless. But when the white man came and we had what we call the scramble for Africa, they divided the continent of Africa into segments. And they decided those segments, whether we are here or we are not here, we will control them. And it is that control that the former colonizers of this continent have, this influence they have over us, that still keeps us in small blocks. If you go to West Africa, they are able to move around each other's countries without any challenge. If you come to West Africa, we've been able to remove those borders. If you go to the SADC region, they've been able to remove. But when we come together as a continent, it becomes a problem. I don't understand why I have to queue at the Egyptian embassy to seek a visa. Yet it is they still call each other Africans. Why would the Ugandan go and look for a visa to go to South Africa? Yet we call each other Africans. It's because the white man still wants us to be that way. And by having those borders, the issue of now us not being able to do business with each other comes in. But for them...
Talk of a white man. Do you think even Africans themselves as the leaders are ready to open the barriers? Because, for example, for you to fly from Morocco, you'll have to either go to France, then circle back and come back to Africa.
The reason why we are not able, because we are still dependent on the West and the East for whatever we want. If, for example, you go to Congo today, 90% of what they eat for any meal is imported from Belgium and France. Because the French want these people to rely on them. So therefore they insist on those borders remaining closed. Who prints our passports? Who prints our currencies? Who sells our raw materials? It is these countries. So the West still wants to insist on those leaders. Please remain as you are. We will help you as you are. If you come together, we will not help you. When Gaddafi was trying to help us to come together, he was either finished or you were told we will not help you. So we need to realize that as a continent, there is a person or there is an entity behind there who is controlling us and making sure that we are not together. Whenever we try to come together, something happens.
Okay. Dr. Now, let's come back. You will also respond to that, by the way. Why the AUC is not so keen on former presidents or former representatives of different countries. But allow me to ask you this question as an economist. So, Raila Odinga is elected, all right, come 2025. Give me an outlook of Africa economically speaking, because we have got different strengths in terms of our output.
You see, one of the aspirations of Right Honorable Raila Odinga as AU chairman is to break the barriers that we have had as African countries.
Mostly for the trade.
And mainly for the trade.
Yes.
I was listening yesterday in Parliament of Tanzania, and one of the members of Parliament was arguing this way, that why should the country deny us, he was referring cement, that the cement that are produced in Kenya are more cheaper in Tanzania as compared with the cement that is available there. So he was actually arguing that we should open our boundaries so that we can get what is cheap outside our country. The Tanzanian people will actually benefit from the same. So when you look at that, Olo, you know, the big barriers that, I mean, the big cause of the barriers that we are having are mainly to do with the economic activities. Because when you look at it, Olo, there are those industries in Tanzania whereby they feel they should be protected from the Kenyan industries. Because most of the industrial products that we produce in this country end up in those countries if the borders would be open. So what they are saying, the best thing is to restrict the inflow, if they are now in Tanzania, the inflow of the industrial or whatever products that are coming from Kenya. Because once they are there, they are going to kill the infant industries in those countries. And that also is replicated elsewhere, Olo, because most of the first world, people who are actually economically viable, they export their goods across the borders. And in this case, those other countries are feeling that the moment we open our borders, these people will flood their own things. Like in Tanzania, Olo, what I learned in Tanzania is actually they don't entertain what we call counterfeit goods. And in this case, in Kenya, it is something that Kenyans are now fighting for. So if we open our borders, that means the same counterfeit goods will end up in Tanzania, which they don't want. They have actually tried to keep their industry actually intact. So in this case, Raila's vision, if it will ever materialize, I think it is a vision that Kenya, I mean the African countries will start benefiting from themselves. We shall be importing from Tanzania as Kenyans, And we shall be exporting, I mean our goods to Tanzania.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, Lord, even as we are talking today, most of the foodstuffs that we have, which we call cheap, be it in form of grains, that is maize, be it in form of beans, be it in form of, most of the foodstuffs that we are enjoying in this country, like rice, they are coming from Tanzania. Why are all these things coming from Tanzania? It is because they are more cheaper there. And the production in Tanzania of most of the farm produce are cheaper in production. That is why they end up in our markets. You go to South Africa, you go to all these other countries, you find up to today we are importing eggs in this country. So if we open our gates, that means eggs from South Africa, eggs from Uganda, eggs from Tanzania will end up in our market. What will be the impact on our infant industries, the poultry industry in this country? It will definitely be depleted. So in this case, it is not benefiting Kenyans in any way if we close the borders. Neither is it benefiting Tanzanians. The moment we open our borders, the two countries will inter-benefit from those things that are actually available in our countries. And in this case, it will open a vibrant economy in Africa. Because there are those things that are, like in West Africa, they are well endowed with coal, well endowed with oil. But most of these oil are exported elsewhere. When in Kenya, we are importing from elsewhere. When Ukraine went to war with Russia, we were complaining about the soaring prices of oil. Why is it so when we have oil in West Africa?
Yes. Okay. Talk of former presidents. Why AUC is not so keen on the former president in 1 minute?
I know the biggest problem that we have in Africa. I talk about an African president who is fearful of the predecessors, those who took over from them. In fact, when an African president takes over, he creates an artificial hostility between the one that is outgoing. Take for example, for even our own country. We would have been able to see Ruto vibrantly clean closing, visiting one another with Uhuru Kenyatta. Why is it not so? So the same hostility is actually replicated elsewhere in Africa, so that they don't allow even the former presidents to sit near to them because of the hostilities that are artificially introduced. So in this case, it is not a good thing. What I'm saying as an African is that we need to embrace the Africanism, and we need to embrace our former leaders.
Did you say as an African? Okay. I love that fact. Okay, gentlemen, allow me to put this way. We have got Agenda 2063 for AUC. And this one I'm getting from the website of AUC. It says that Agenda 2063 is the blueprint and master plan for the transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. It is also the strategic framework for delivering on Africa's goal for inclusive and sustainable development, and is a concrete manifestation of the Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. So when you look at this Agenda 2063, Musa Faki is getting out of office. Well, I don't want to give a comparison whether he has achieved or etc., but are these goals achievable?
Collective prosperity.
Prosperity.
That is the key word there. Collective prosperity, because that is what we are lacking as Africa.
Okay, all right. Let me give engineer. I'll come back to you, Dr.
Well, those things are very good.
Collective
the way
prosperity.
They are written. Collective prosperity, resilience, and all that.
Pan-Africanism and all that.
But if you look at when that agenda was prepared, which is back in 2013, it was a 50-year plan for the continent of Africa. What has happened in the last 10 years? Ethiopia has gone into civil strife. Sudan is at war today. Central Africa region has never seen peace. South Sudan, which had just got independence, in the same year, we had challenges of our own. The DRC, yes, it has had several elections since then, but still, there is still war in DRC. The Sahel region has had several coups in that area, in Niger, in Mali, and the other countries. Chad, we have had a president assassinated. We have so many changes that have happened in West Africa. The only stable region that has remained is probably the Southern African region. So therefore, we still have a lot to do as a continent to be able to reach those aspirations. 50 years since it was a 50-year plan, 10 years already done. We have now remaining with that 39 years left to achieve this. It is a huge milestone. Yes, we must appreciate the support we have received from from China in terms of helping us achieve some of the development challenges. But also it has come at a very high cost. We have lost a lot of the resources we are planning to use to leapfrog Africa to the aspirations we have there. We have lost a lot of wealth over the last 10 years with China bringing us roads. What have they taken away from us? We are having a lot of challenges right now in terms of our democracy being challenged. We are also having a bulge in terms of the youth. No job for them. These are the people who should have been engaged right now in work, in areas where those aspirations can be achieved. So we have a lot to do as a continent to be able to achieve that.
Yes.
It is a good aspiration, but yet we are very far.
We are very far. Did you answer that question about former heads of state?
Yes, I already answered.
All right,
yes.
Daktari. So the Agenda 2063, he's given his insight on this one. But it seems that you talked of collective responsibility as prosperity of the continent. Are we going to achieve this Agenda 2063?
I think that
or are we close to achieving some of them?
Not so long as we are not at the same wavelength, at the same understanding of our development. You find that in most countries of Africa, we still have a problem as far as the.
Okay.
We still have a problem as far as the.
I'll love to fix your microphone.
No, I will do that.
No, somebody will have to. Okay, let me come back to you very quickly. Wathimba, because now, let me get to understand how this one is working. Perhaps people might not understand what is the role of AUC chairperson. So somebody's going to fix your microphone just shortly. So the question is, do you people really understand the role of AUC chairperson? Let me get it. This is also on the website of AUC. And they say that the chairperson of the African Union Commission is the chief executive officer, 1, legal representative of the AU, that is number 2, and the Commission's chief accounting officer. Wathimba, these are three big positions. The chairperson of the Commission is elected by the Assembly for a 4-year term, renewable, all right? And then the chairperson's functions include 1, overall responsibility for the Commission's administration and finances, all right? Number 2, promoting and popularizing the AU's objectives and enhancing its performance. Consulting and coordinating with key stakeholders like member states, development partners, we also have RECs, we also have and etc. And lastly, also appointing and managing Commission staff, acting as a depository for all AU and OAU treaties and legal instruments. This is a lot of work for one person sitting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The last time Raila Amolo Odinga had a day-to-day job, which is a day-to-day job there, was when he was 63 years old and retired at 68 when he was a prime minister of the Republic of Kenya. Between 2008 and 2013 or 2012. Then he has not had a day job for the last 10 years or 15 years. Now he's going to sit on if he's given this opportunity, he's going to take a day job at the age of 78.
And he's 64.
And there is a lot of work ahead of him.
Yeah. Now,
this responsibility that he has been put on comes with a lot of challenges. There's something you've mentioned there, finance and administration. One of the challenges the AU has had, even us at the EAC, is that we are still funded by, part of our funding comes from donors. And it is those donors who call the shot. The European partnership agreement that Kenya signed recently has been a challenge because most of the East African countries were not willing to sign that thing because of the influence they had from the AU, from the donor countries. And it's the same donor countries who fund the EAC. At the AU, China is also a big donor. And therefore, China calls the shot at the AU. So we need to see if Raila can be able to marshal all the heads of Africa to be able to find a way where the AU can be self-funding itself with our own resources so that we remove the influence this Western and Eastern world has over the AU. And we'll be able to make independent decisions. The challenge we have had with the AU that we've not been able to arrive where we're able to make independent decisions about the affairs of Africa. Whether it's in COVID time, even right now we have MPOX, we still have to rely on those who fund us to make very important decisions. If we can be able to self-fund ourselves as a continent, then have the AU Commission chair move around, talking to leaders, listening to them, understanding their challenges, convincing them on what is important for us to work together, what East is saying about the West, what West is saying about the East, how we can be able to find points of convergence that can be able to help this continent to grow together will be important. For example, West Africa is where a lot of the immigrants who are dying in the Mediterranean Sea are coming from. But where do they pass through? They pass through North Africa, which is Tunisia, Morocco, and those countries. Why can't we as Africa have a conversation without the EU coming to direct us how to work together? But you find right now, Tunisia is promised €1 billion to be able to deal with the issue of immigration. What do they do with that money? They mistreat our black people. We want the EU chair to have a conversation with those North African countries and the West African countries where these people are coming from, and understand how can we help to build the economy down here so that these people don't start migrating to the north. With this money you are getting from the AU, can it come and help these economies so that they reduce in terms of immigration? Those are the kind of conversation we have. Here in East Africa, why are we not doing business with each other? Why is Congo buying food from France instead of buying milk from Kenya? Or bread from Kampala? We need to have those conversations led by our AU chair. And if we can have that reliance as a continent, as a commission, then we can be able to convince ourselves to talk independently.
Dr. I think I'm going to push you because of time. 2 questions. Number 1 is about the Agenda 2063. You're answering that very quickly, perhaps in under 30 seconds. And then now, there's a lot of work for Baba in Ethiopia.
I think, as my brother has actually alluded well, that it also depends on funding. But my view actually is, with the right leadership, Africa has not been able to fund itself because of the African countries themselves failing to honor their responsibilities of contributing towards the plans that they have actually alluded in this the so-called blueprint. Because you cannot make a plan without putting actually the resources that are to be used to execute the same plan. Number 2, I believe what we have been lacking in Africa is the right leadership. Because what His Excellency the President Ruto talked sometime in one of the African conferences is that we need to fund ourselves. We need to be able to contribute towards our funding process, so that we can be able to be self-reliant on what we are doing as a nation, as an African continent. And in this case, if Africa will honor their pledges, if they will honor their whatever the plan that they have actually put in place, I believe Right Honorable Raila will have an easy time in executing the same blueprint. And what I'm also overseeing, as my brother said, as Raila as he is now, is an elderly person. And in this case, I think he must put up a very professionals who will actually execute what he wants. He'll have to put up a very professional team of experts who are going to be the secretariat in Addis Ababa. And these are the people who will be, it will be just another government. It will be just another government, be it on economic affairs, be it on political affairs, be it on legal affairs, be it on what. I mean, it will be a whole web of secretariat that will help his, Right Honorable Raila Odinga to execute his mandate as the chairman of the AU. I believe it is not going to be very difficult.
You believe it's not going to be difficult. Let me quote what Mama Suluhu said. Tanzania anasema baba anatosha achaguliwe. That's how Suluhu said.
Across the board, he's our baba.
He's our baba. And she said that in Tanzania they call her mama. Okay, gentlemen, we have to wrap it up there. I wish we had more time, but hey, we've done what we can. And the conversation will still continue because the journey is still long until election, which will be held sometimes in February 2025. Elections will be held then. But then Raila is also hoping to get 34+1 votes to win in the first round. And now what is now remaining is to hit the ground running for the campaigns. Crispus Wathimba, an engineer and also political governance and expert, joining me on set, as well as Dr. Rotich. You people, you've been grateful. You've been so gracious to us coming on set every time we call on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Not taken for granted. Asante sana for watching. My name is Victor Lo. Have a good morning. Bye-bye.